Okay, and I'm going to switch the screen to Istishraqiyyun al-Judud just to see if you can you see okay, all right. Okay, so we can start. Like, you remember we're talking about Orientalism and how it has a particular discourse, it has a particular way of building an argument, of building representation of reality or people or ideas. And so Hall here has a good section, just 2 pages, which describes what this course is and how it is powerful, how it has manifestations of power. And once we understand this or get an idea of this, we can go back to the article and then see what of the here is applicable or kind of resonates in the okay. So when we look at we have okay, I will read. We have looked at the historical process by which an idea of the West emerged from Europe's growing internal cohesion and its changing relations with non-Western societies. So you need to read the sections before to kind of understand what he's saying here. We turn next to the formation of the language of discourse. So we're not talking about language in terms of language, French, English, Arabic. We're talking about the content of the language and how it is built, what the meanings that are used represent, and they could have different interpretations of meanings depending on the listener. So here it is important to identify or to be able to distinguish what is meant by certain terms and how the composite construction or interrelation of the meanings feed into a particular network or a net of language that produces an interpretation or representation of a reality or of other people or oneself. So in which, here we're talking about discourses in which Europe began to describe and represent the difference between itself and others. It encountered in the course of expansion. Okay, so here we're talking about the time of European expansion, colonization, and how it would then identify what other means and who is the other and what attributes are of the other. We are now beginning to sketch the formation of the discourse of the West and the rest. However, we need first to understand what is meant by the term discourse. Okay. Now, discourse here is not just identifying or representing or meaning or reality or geography or people or civilizations. It also is very much related to power, because how the discourse is built and what meaning it gives lays the foundation or lays the basis or directs policies, and whether they be policies, economic policies, military policies, educational policies, and the like. And in a way, it tries to capture the reality or context or the difficulties or challenges of the other, and repackages it into something that is advantageous to the West or to the Orientalist discourse. What is discourse? In common sense, a discourse is simply a coherent and rational body of speech or writing, which a speech or a sermon, a talk, or constructed litany. But here the term is being used in a more specialized way. By discourse, we mean a particular way of representing the West. So here, the discourse is not just a way of expression; it is a way of representing. And what is representing? It means how one describes oneself and how one describes the other in accordance or in contrast with oneself and the rest. So and the relations between them. A discourse is a group of statements which provide a language for talking about a particular topic, i.e., a way of representing a particular kind of knowledge about a topic. So, a discourse is a way of not just talking about a particular topic, but also a way of transmitting knowledge or claiming knowledge about a particular topic. So there's the topic and there's the knowledge about the topic, and discourse is a way of holding the knowledge about the topic and the topic in a particular relationship, which is not necessarily objective, but has ulterior motives or has ulterior or alternate other interests involved, which are representation of the power relationship of being dominant or subordinate or being equal. Okay, but in most cases it's dominant and subordinate. It's not dealing as equals. When statements about a topic are made within a particular discourse, the discourse makes it possible to construct the topic in certain ways, or in a certain way. So a discourse is made up of statements, and when the statements combined are made about a particular topic or subject, it means that they then shape how the topic itself is constructed and how to resolve it, how to tackle it, how to remedy it, or how to handle it. A discourse does not consist of one statement, but of several statements. So it's not as simple as saying somebody this is this. In division in the Arab world is just ethnic. Okay, no, it would have maybe the division in the region is ethnic as well as maybe historical. Okay, so there's the history and then there's the human component, as well as the happenings of past times. So these two statements give you an idea about how to view a particular problem or dynamic. And this is the function of discourse. So a discourse does not consist of one statement, but of several statements working together to form what the French social theorist Michel Foucault calls a discursive formation. So therefore, this construct of the various statements in a particular way is a discursive formation. Okay. And while we're talking about just with the way language and what terms are used and how the combination of the terms give a particular view or diagnosis of a particular situation, there's a lot of power interest in how this is shaped. Okay, which has political dynamics in it. So it's not just discussion for the sake of discussion. What is discussed has implications on what policies are adopted, how to view the problem, and where the focus is and where the focus is not. Okay. So they refer to the same object. So here's a quote from Foucault. They refer to the same object, share the same style, and support a strategy, a common institutional or political drift or pattern. So we're talking about a way of expression which is linked and interwoven with strategy and a common institutional and political pattern. So therefore, when something is institutional, it means that there's a body of knowledge or a body of language, or a body of expression and the network of statements that have been already made into a particular discourse, and a lot of time and research has been invested in shaping this form of discursive formation. And it is usually in think tanks or institutions of knowledge that have been present for a long time. In the past article, he mentioned the previous article mentioned Oxford and institutions in France and Spain and elsewhere. Okay, so these institutions have over the time, over centuries, over hundreds of years, acquired knowledge, have acquired information and processed them into a particular knowledge which has formed a discursive formation, which has also fed into strategy and objectives of how to deal with other places of the world and other peoples of the world. Okay, and this is not from reports from Cousins and Hussein. One important point about this notion of discourse is that it is not based on the conventional distinction between thought and action, language and practice. Discourse is about the production of knowledge through language, but it is itself produced by a practice, which is discursive practice, the practice of producing meaning. So therefore, how you interpret, the one who controls the production of meaning, controls the production controls essentially the function of the discursive formation or the discourse. And therefore, as I explained last time, if the Orientalized, the one who is targeted by Orientalism, accepts the meaning of the Oriental or Orientalist, therefore the mindset of the Oriental, the one targeted, becomes Orientalized. So therefore, the person who's targeted loses the agency, the ability to control their own production of meaning, and therefore become subservient or dependent on somebody else's interpretation of meaning, or not only interpretation, but the production of meaning. And therefore, when we talk about production of meaning, we also have implicitly a claim to having a monopoly over what meaning is valid and what meaning is not, based on the processes that were involved in deducing or deriving that meaning, referring back to the institutions that have produced this sort of meaning, which give legitimacy or delegitimize or do not grant legitimacy to all other discursive formations. So the practice of producing meaning, since all societies practices entail meaning, all practices have a discursive aspect. So therefore, discursive formation is not just again, it's not just a linguistic term. It is also it also shapes action. And here is the power of the discursive formation: is that it is able to influence action. It's not just influencing the mind. The influencing the mind is the first step. The second step is to once having influenced the mind and how one thinks and interprets the meanings or one's reality, then one moves into the second step of, okay, what based on what this interpretation is or diagnosis is, what are the subsequent actions or remedies. So it enters into and influences all social practices. Foucault would argue that the discourse of the West about the West was deeply implicated in practice. Now we talk about colonization, in how the West behaved towards the West. To get a further sense of Foucault's theory of discourse, we must bear the following. So there are 3 points to keep in mind when talking about discourse. A discourse can be produced by many individuals. It's not just one person who says that I've produced a discourse. No, it can be many people, and even many people working in institutions of knowledge, universities, think tanks, research centers that are world renowned or have reputations globally, worldwide. So individuals in different institutional settings like families, prisons, hospitals, and asylums. So and therefore it can affect the scope of what it affects could be families, prisons, hospitals, asylums, but also other places in the globe. Its integrity or coherence is not dependent on whether or not issues from one place or a single speaker or subject or subject. So therefore, it is the integrity or whether the discourse is valid and is sound does not depend on whether whether or not it issues it comes from one place or from a single speaker. It could come from institutions, so it could be an institutional discourse. Therefore, nevertheless, every discourse constructs positions from which alone it makes sense. So therefore, every discourse has its own kind of way of shaping what it sees, how it analyzes, and what the diagnoses are, and then what the prescriptions are. Anyone deploying a discourse must position themselves as if they were the subject of the discourse. For example, we may not ourselves believe in the natural superiority of the West, but if we use the discourse of the West and the rest, we will necessarily find ourselves speaking from the position that holds that the West is a superior civilization. So, discourse, one of the characteristics of discourse is that even if you do not believe what the discourse implicitly is promoting, you may find yourself using the discourse and therefore falling into the discursive formation which assumes and implies and actually promotes that the West is a superior civilization. So Foucault says to describe a statement does not consist in analyzing the relations between the author and what he or she is saying or says, but in determining what position can and must be occupied by an individual if he is to be the subject of the statement. So therefore, it is not about objective analysis of what, or it is not about who's saying what. It is about what is being said by whom. Okay, which is different. If you focus on who's saying what, then you focus on the person and where they stand, and therefore you shape what is being said by who's saying. But if you focus about what is being said by whom, then you're focusing on the language, the discursive formation, and the form of expression and the implicit dynamics of power relationship of dominant subordinate in the shape. So you could be from the east using a discursive formation which is Western, and therefore one would at this point be not authentic to one's representation of the meanings of which are authentic to one's history. It could be Western Europeans' interpretation of one's history, and therefore oneself, even though you may be coming from a different geographical setting or cultural setting. So the power of discourse is that it is appealing to those who want to talk about a particular topic, whether from the East or the West, but it's enticing, meaning that it pulls in. It tries to pull in or tries to gravitate that anybody talking about a particular topic regarding the East or West is gravitated towards the Western's expression or the Orientalist expression of the diagnosis and problem. Second, discourses. So the first point is that the discourse can be produced by many people and institutions and affecting many levels of people and places and institutions and geographies. The second point is that discourses are not closed systems. A discourse draws on elements in other discourses, binding them into its own network of meanings. So therefore, a discourse is not just like a field of knowledge. A discourse is not like history, just history, and then economics, and politics, and biology, and chemistry. A discourse is a way in which you fit economics with politics and give meaning. And a discourse is a way also which fits, for example, genetics into understanding the genomes and their organization within genes or the molecules and how they react, and to try to mimic that into a political system. Okay, that is where you then use biology or genealogy to kind of understanding the genes in order to understand how you can reconstruct or redesign political systems by already deriving future projections from the activities of the genes or the molecules, and or the cells. And thus, as we saw in the preceding sections, the discourse of Europe drew on the earlier discourses of Christendom. So therefore, it comes from already a pool of knowledge which had to do with Europe being termed as being the place of Christendom. It's not just, it wasn't called Europe at the time. When you talk about the Middle Ages, altering or translating its meaning, traces of past discourses remain embedded in more recent discourses of the West. So therefore, this discourse is not just unidisciplinary; it's multidisciplinary. One, two, it doesn't come out of nowhere. It comes out of already a context before it comes to before it is developed. So therefore, the background for the discourse has to do with the history of who is shaping the discourse and their worldview. The third aspect is that statements within a discursive formation need not all be the same. So, but the relationships and differences between them must be regular and systematic. So therefore, it is not, you do not measure a discursive formation by what the individual statements are, but rather where the statements fit in together to form a more comprehensive view. Okay? So it is not as superficial as just focusing on a particular statement. It is how multiple statements therefore fit into a particular pattern, and this pattern is what the discursive formation would be. So Foucault calls it the system of the depression. Whenever one can describe between a number of statements, such a system is depression. Whenever one can define irregularity, then we will say that we are dealing with a discursive formation. So when one is describing things between a number of statements, that's the system. But when one can define when things are uniform or regular or that they fit together, then we're talking about a discursive formation. So there are two within the abstract form of how you compile information, how you interpret information, and how you diagnose problem. There are two aspects. One aspect is which the statements are similar to the other and are in conjunction, not contradictory. And that's where you have a discursive formation. And then where there could be a different, statements which are not in line, This would be part of the dispersion. So it could be, you could have a discursive formation which has statements that are consistent and statements that are not consistent with one another. But the important thing is that what reveals a discourse is how they are put together, those that align and those that do not align. Okay, and how the explanation is given and what explanation is given to say that to make the problem, to kind of bridge the problem. Okay. So can you you must have some questions. So if you have anything, if you have not understood and you want me to give an example before we go into the text, I can do that. And I'm opening the mics to everyone. Yes, are you with me or lost? Okay, one moment. Sorry. Are you all with me? Okay. Okay. For example, you can take two statements. Okay. For example, I am Palestine. Okay. That's a statement. And therefore I am Palestinian. That's another statement. Now that can have two meanings depending on the listener, or it could have several meanings, but we focus on two. One, either that I'm Palestinian means that I represent a struggle for liberation, or that I represent inability to, or I represent the use of violence. Okay, so therefore two statements that who I am and where and what I represent is interpreted. So you can have two interpretations. Okay. Now, if you interpret that I am struggling for liberation, it means then implicitly it means that part of the discursive formation is that you are assumed to be on equal footing as a human being as the rest of the people in the world with equal rights. Okay. If you categorize me as somebody who's implicitly or inherently violent just because I'm Palestinian, it means then that I'm part of the group of people in the world which cannot arrive at solutions or political solutions which are through rational way of thinking, and therefore I'm assumed to be only capable of violence, and therefore even where the discursive formation takes on another level of power is that, okay, if I'm assumed to be Palestinian and struggling to make problems and by use of violence, then the only way of dealing with me is to decapacitate my ability to use violence. by any means, by economic, educational, whatever means necessary. Okay, and therefore the end goal is already predetermined by how the relationship of the two statements is being interpreted, which then has a remedy, quote unquote. The remedy is that you make them weak, keep them weak totally, so that their violence is ineffective. That's the solution. If you go by there's a struggle for liberation and to acquire equal rights as independent people, then you assume that the path of the future to remedy is to give equitable rights and to rectify, resolve any wrongdoing done in the previously, such as refugeedom and other things. Now, where there could be a statement that is problematic is say, okay, I'm Palestinian, it's assumed that I'm a human being, but then okay, and I have feelings, I have emotions, for example. So therefore, when I suffer, I as a Palestinian and as a human who is also Palestinian, I express my suffering. Now, the first part, the first framework, which categorizes me as one who would be, say, of the violent type, would categorize me that even my emotions is raw instincts. It has nothing to do with injustice. It is just that I am hot-tempered, incapable of rationality, and therefore cannot contain my emotions. Okay, if you presume that by Palestinian being human and that you suffer and then you express your emotions, it means that there is a cause for the suffering, and therefore the cause of the suffering needs to be addressed. It is not the victim who needs to be reconfigured or redesigned to adapt to the cause of the suffering. So therefore, you can have the two first statements, Palestinian, and therefore what you represent, and therefore implicitly that you're human. But what type of human being are you? The one that is irrational and primitive and instinctual, or just the human that is capable of feelings, rationality, as well as emotion and expression of grief and expression of resentment. Okay, which would then be part of the struggle. Is this a bit clearer? If it's not clear, let me know now before we go into any other text. Did you get the idea? So therefore, you can have similar statements, but what they mean is different, and how the meaning is built and constructed also has also implicit what how you address the problem or how you rectify a wrongdoing. Okay. Everyone okay? I've unmuted everyone just in case anybody wants to say something. Do you have any questions? Again. Okay, anybody has not understood so far? Okay, so now we'll go to the text. And we'll see how in the text is we see the dynamics at play. What we kind of went over here. Okay. Okay. So we go to Safi Nuzud. Now here the first section is part of the speech which Terje Rød Larsen, who is a Norwegian diplomat. He was influential in the 90s and early 20th, first decade of the 20th century in arriving at Middle East peacekeeping or peace resolutions and talking, trying to do conflict resolution in the Middle East. Okay, so he comes from an background, educational background, and he also has his position of UN representative, which gives him two dynamics or two credentials to work from. The knowledge credential, which is institutionalized, and position he holds, which gives him effective executive power to act upon his knowledge. So therefore, you have the actor and the instructor, the knowledge. And this is what he's talking about. The article focuses on the new Orientalists. They are not just academic. They combine the position of influence as well as the position of influence in knowledge production. So he said, we will read what he's saying, Terry Larson, to before in front of the Academy in Saudi Arabia at the time in 2007. And how during the first decade of this century there was this idea of where the threat was coming from. Was it from Iran, or were the problems ethnic in the region, and that's why there were problems or internal fighting in the region, and so forth. So we will take sentences or statements and see where we go and try to dissect them. So أنا مسرور جدا. اوكي انا مسرور جدا بوجودي هنا اليوم لكون الامير تركي الفيصل والاكاديميه الدوليه للسلام يتمتعان بعلاقه خاصه منذ وجوده في واشنطن. Okay, so he's in Washington before the academy, the International Academy for Peace. And Amir Turki from Saudi Arabia is present in the وأنه عضو في مجلس إدارة. So he's a member of the executive committee of this think tank. وأنه لشرف عظيم أن أكون بينكم جميعا اليوم على أن أشدد من البداية على أنني أتكلم بصفتي رئيس الأكاديمية الدولية للسلام لا باسم الأمم المتحدة. So therefore he says he's happy to be in this setting and that he's happy that he's with Turki Faisal, the Prince Turki Faisal, who is a member of the executive committee of the think tank. And I mean, there are other executive committees of the think tank. So why is he kind of focusing on this? Is it because he's from the region and therefore it has certain resonance? Okay, we see. And that is a great honor for him that he would be here at this venue, but he is speaking not in his capacity as UN diplomat or representative, but as an academic, and and not as any academic, as the head of this institute in which he is giving this introductory note. حيث أعمل مبعوثا خاصا للأمين العام من أجل تطبيق قرار 1559. 1959 has to do with Lebanon. So this is right after the war in Lebanon 2006, in which 1559 is to impose new international constrictions on southern Lebanon, and particularly the resistance in the south, so that if there is any action from the south towards Israel, that it would then become a violation of international security, and then it would, under Chapter 7 of the UN, it would demand international intervention, immediate international intervention. So this was the context in which he's trying to reshape the Middle East so that any potential resistance movements would be then put under 1559, beginning with the resistance in southern Lebanon, the Shia, the Hezbollah. And this is the speech. The title of the speech he was giving Terry Rodlason was "لبنان الصورة المصغرة عن الصراع في المنطقة." So therefore, he's taking the case of Lebanon and superimposing it as the diagnosis or the diagnostics for analyzing the whole of the Arab world. مركز الملك فيصل للبحوث والدراسات الإسلامية الرياض. Yeah, so his paper was in Riyadh at the Markaz of the Buhuth al-Dirasat al-Islamiyya, and he was speaking in his capacity as the head of the International Academy for Peace, which was based in Washington. طيب بحلول للليبراليين في العالم العربي. This is not the end of quote. So بحلول الليبراليين في العالم العربي اليوم نعت كل متحدث عن تحدث المشروع الاستعماري بالراديكالية أو بالرجعية أو استخدام لغة بائدة، ولا نعلم إن كان هؤلاء يدرون أن العالم الليبرالي الذي يدعو الانتماء إليه بزخر هو نفسه دائرة ضخمة ومتنامية منذ انتهاء الحرب الباردة. So therefore he's saying that the liberal discourse that is being promoted in the region at the time is part of the remainings of the Cold War discourse. ويؤكد نحدد الفكر الاستشراقي والاستعماري وتطبيقه عمليا، وأن البلديات وأطر مختلفة تتناسب واقع العصر ومتطلباته، ولكن قبل الخوض في التحليل طيب نحدد منهم الاستشراقي موجود. So this is introductory. بحسب إدوارد سعيد يمكن التعرف إلى الخطاب الاستشراقي من خلال عنصرين أساسيين متلازمين: المعرفة والقوة. So the discursive discourse and the discursive formation is knowledge with power. راجع هون go back to إدوارد سعيد. وهذا التلازم يعني أن المعرفة تحمل دلالات القوة والعكس. So therefore knowledge has implicit power implications. فالمعرفة ليست التعرف على ماهية حضارة أو ثقافة ما وحسب، وإنما التسليم أيضا بالقدرة على القيام بتلك المعرفة. So therefore here the knowledge is not just to know about the other, it's claiming that you are able to know how to know about the other, which is a much deeper way of knowledge. So it's not just how you categorize people; it's how you claim that you know that you are better equipped in categorizing people. والقوة هي الانتصار على الآخر لا بسبب التفوق العسكري أو الاقتصادي وحدهما، وإنما بسبب التفوق المعرفي أساسا. So therefore, the one who claims dominance over knowledge is the one who claims then has a control in the discursive formation in this discourse. وأن هذا المفهوم الاستشراقي المحدد والمرتكز على تلازم القوة والمعرفة يعني أن الحديث عن تحدد الخطاب الاستشراقي لا يشير إلى ولادة جديدة له، بل هو اعتراف باستمرارية هذا الخطاب وأن بأشكال ونسب تتفاوت وسطوة الحالة الاستعمارية المراقبة. So therefore, this kind of discourse which merges power and knowledge is not one that is new and something that has kind of passed time. It's something that continues to still affect knowledge production and discursive formations. And it comes in conjunction with military dominance, economic dominance, and therefore tries to proclaim as well knowledge dominance. I mean, we're not denying that the West has reached quite advanced technological stages. The contention or the critique is that okay, so be it, or be it so. It doesn't mean that they can claim monopoly knowledge in interpreting other people and defining other people based on their Western-centric or Eurocentric perspective, and therefore to claim the futures of people in the other regions based on claiming more sophisticated or advanced knowledge. طب هذا الخطاب وإن بأشكال ونسب تتفاوت وسطوة الحالة الاستعمارية المراقبة عليه فإن تحدد الخطاب يعني تزايد التلازم بين المعرفة والقوة. So therefore, this kind of combination of discourse which combines power and knowledge becomes more impacting. ويصبح البحث عن هذا التحدد في الفكر العربي المعاصر بحثا عن تحليلات جديدة لمعادلة القوة والمعرفة. ومن أبرز هذه التحديات تجليات. So he's talking about how this manifests itself. He talks about three. تزايد الارتباط بين الدوائر الثقافية والأكاديمية والبحوث من جهة عنصر المعرفة ودوائر صناعة القرار من جهة أخرى اللي هي عنصر القوة. So therefore, what is becoming more of practice has been since say the beginning of this century has been the emergence of the influence of those who make knowledge, produce knowledge, and those who produce policy, and therefore the executive people and those who produce knowledge are sometimes the same people, if not advising both groups. وبالتزامن مع فصل ظاهري لهما. So even though there may be kind of a superficial separation of or distinction between both. وينعكس هذا التواطؤ في تنامي الدور المزدوج للشخص المستشرق الجديد كسياسي عنصر قوة وخبير عنصر المعرفة. So therefore, the new Orientalist is not just renowned or capable in producing knowledge, but is also capable in also executing based on that knowledge in politics. وهو ما نراه في شخصيات تاريخية عدة لعبت دورا مفصليا في مراحل حساسة من الاستعمار كبالفور ولورنس العرب وشخصيات معاصرة تلعب أدوارا مشابهة في يومنا هذا كتيري رود لارسون وبيتر جالبرايت كما سنبين لاحقا. So therefore, examples of this new Orientalists are, say, Terry Rod Larson, who has both positions, the political influence to activate policy and the knowledge influence of being head of an institution which produces knowledge about resolving conflicts and peace. So, ثانيا رواج النظريات التي ترسم صورة جامدة عن الشعوب الخاضعة للنظام الاجتماعي التي تحكمها. So therefore, they also become proponents or promoters of a particular view of identifying social problems or or social or political instability in regions, and particularly in our region, بحيث تستحيل هذه النظم قوانين طبيعية لا تخضع لعوامل الزمان والمكان وحركة التاريخ. And therefore they try to مش تستحيل بجوز إنه it tries to fool the natural laws which would normally be governed by time, place, and progression of history. So ثالثا تصور الفعل الاستعماري وصف ضرورة إخلاقية ناتجة عن احتكار المستعمر للمعرفة والقوة في آن. And therefore there's such new Orientalistic, they say that, well, colonization actually is a good thing because it's actually necessary to control people who are not as advanced, who are incapable of becoming sophisticated in rational thinking, and therefore analyzing the reality from knowledgeable and informative and educated references. وهذا ما يبرر في الحديث عن عبء الرجل الأبيض. So therefore we have he's using the term the white man's burden. You know, this kind of white man's burden is that it was used to justify colonialism, is that it was not actually an aggressive form or an indication of aggression by the white man to expand and colonize others, as much as it was more the white man taking the forefront in bringing civilization and development and advancement to the rest of the globe, which was not as advanced as Europe. And therefore, it was the burden of the white man to have to civilize the rest of the globe. Okay? Which is what the white man's burden means. الذي نجد شبه إعادة صياغته أنه المسؤولية الحماية والدستورية الجديدة كما سنرى. So therefore, to the burden of the West to protect the region and the burden of the West to protect the constitutions or new constitutions that are being developed in the regions is something which the new Orientalists say that it is their responsibility to do so for the benefit of all mankind. إذا دققنا في النتاج الفكري الغربي على مدى العقدين المنصرمين سنجد معالم واضحة لهذه التجليات. طيب, okay. So here the one who's writing the article is analyzing Terry Rod Larson's use of terms, which brings us back to what we were just reading. Notice, just to remind you, we look at the terms that are being used, what are the statements that are being made, whether the statements are in sync or contradict each other, and how the diagnosis of the region is shaped, and what the prognosis and the remedy is. Are you with me? Say something, I have a blank screen. I may have to reboot. Okay, so I'll be back with you in a minute. Everybody okay? I'm back. Okay. Play. So now we go back to the text here, and we go down to okay. If you have any questions, I'll be looking at the chat as well. So if you have any questions as we go along, just add. Okay. So we go to the okay. يا صاحب السمو. This is what he starts. هكذا يخاطب العالم السلطان قبل أن يمتدحه ويعلي من شأنه. أنا مسرور جدا بوجودي هنا اليوم. So therefore, part of the way of introducing a discourse is to kind of what you would say flatter the person whom you're talking to and make them feel as if they are more than very important. طيب بوجوده هنا إنه لشرف عظيم أن أكون بينكم جميعا اليوم. Okay, which is fine. Normally this would be interpreted as okay, yes, as a welcoming statement, but from an Orientalist, if there's an Orientalist agenda, it is part of the. It is not just a courtesy introduction. It has significance and impact. Okay, so if anybody is speaking, you would say, "I'm glad to be here and thank you for inviting me, and it's a great honor to be here." That would be kind of this one statement. If you're in a normal context, would be kind of a nice and an appreciative introductory statement. But here it has more bearing and impact because it is designed to lower the defenses, for example, the intellectual defenses or the discursive defenses of the one who is targeted. ويمكن الاطلاع على النص الكامل للخطاب. Okay, so we can see the full statement. لكن الأدوار ليست موزعة كما تجري العادة حين يجتمع السلطان بالعالم. So therefore you have a prince who is the head of the Institute for Islamic Studies, and then you have somebody who has credentials like Terje Rod-Larsen, who's distinguished academic career in the production of knowledge, is now heading the Washington Institute for Peace Studies, International Institute for Peace Studies, and he's also has the position of as UN representation, which has executive capability as being the representative of the head of the UN at the time in 2007. طيب, so here رود-لارسن الذي يجسد الدور المزدوج للمستشرق اللي هو السلطة في حين أن العالم جديد هو رود لارسون السياسي الدولي الممثل للأمم المتحدة. Therefore, Terry Rod Larson has two capacities. He is also according to the author of the article, the New Orientalist, and he's also has executive standing, political executive standing as the representative of the Umm al-Muttahida, head of the United Nations. And he's the expert الخبير والمثقف الأستاذ السابق في السياسية والفلسفة في جامعة أوسلو والرئيس الحالي لأكاديمية السلام العالمية النرويجية. So therefore he is the former professor in political science and philosophy and in Oslo University, and is currently the head of the academic Institute for Global Peace, which is also Norwegian. طيب وامتلاك عنصر القوة والمعرفة يمكنهم من التنقل بين الدورين في دور مساءلة أو التقويض لمصداقية الخطابة. So therefore he could claim that he has knowledge and he has experience, and therefore both give kind of clout or influence on what he's saying, or bear more credibility to what he's saying. كما يسمح له بالتأكيد الفصل بينهما. And he also, when convenient, would affirm the separation between his capacity as an academic and expert and one who's also executive with a political position. فيلزم في مستهل الخطاب بأنه يتكلم بصفة علمية، على أن أشدد منذ بداية على أنني أتكلم بصفة رئيس الأكاديمية الدولية للسلام. So therefore he's talking here about in his capacity as an academic, as the head of the Institute for Global Peace، ولا باسم الأمم المتحدة حيث أعرف عمل مبعوث خاص للأمين العام لتطبيق قرار. So therefore, and not in his capacity as representative of the General Secretary of the UN. ثم لا ينفك بكشف لمن يخاطب عن سقوطه السياسية عبر تفكير بين فكرتين والأخرى بدور الفاعل في مجرى الأحداث المهمة. So therefore, while Terry Rod Larson kind of says that he is speaking in his capacity as academic, he does not shy away from reminding the audience that he has several important or key roles in addressing conflicts in this region. I have again a blackout. Can you hear me? Anyone? So I will go on and see how much we can cover. Sorry about this. So we're at the last paragraph of the first page still, and here's where it gets interesting in terms of how we what we read from Hull. If you have any questions, just either use your microphone or use the chat. I've opened the chat. Okay. طيب. So here he's talking about the dual capacity that Terry Rawson has as the political expert in conflict resolution and in this region, and in his capacity as deputy of the Secretary General of the UN at the time in 2006, and trying to implement resolution 1559, which has to do with southern Lebanon, right after the 2006 war in Lebanon. طيب ثم لا ينفك يكشف لمن ينفك بكشف لمن يخاطبهم عن سطوته السياسية عبر تذكيرهم بين الفينة والأخرى بدوره الفعال في مجرى الأحداث المهمة كالانسحاب الإسرائيلي أو السوري من لبنان والانتخابات النيابية اللبنانية في صيف 2005 وحرب تموز 2006 ويكتمل بترشيد رودلاسون للخطاب الاستشراقي في اطلاع أهل المنطقة ومن على أرضهم بالذات حيث يلقي محاضرته على واقعهم. So therefore here's the Orientalist or somebody coming from the outside claiming expertise and knowledge in politics and philosophy and about our region and having executive political influence through in this capacity in the UN and being instrumental in shaping key events in the region, which is elections in Lebanon, dealing with the war in 2006, and how he then describes our region. So therefore, somebody from the outside claiming knowledge with executive capacity coming to give the diagnosis for our region. لأنه يعي طبيعة الشعوب الشرق الأوسط, because he knows he is more knowledgeable about the people of the region, فإنه يؤكد أن الصراعات التي تعصف بهذه الشعوب ليست نتيجة لاصطدام الحضارات, which is what Huntington is talking about, which we shall come to, بل نتيجة صدام القيم ضمن المجتمع الواحد. So what this is very very important. I need to. What do you think about this transition from صراع الحضارات أو صدام الحضارات, clash of civilizations, to صدام القيم ضمن المجتمع الواحد? What is he doing by making this statement? Is implicit in this statement. What is Terry Rawson really saying? I have opened the mic so anybody can speak, and if you want to also write it down in the chat, let me know. I've moved here. Okay. Anyone?
You hear me, Doctor?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
either
thank you.
through chat or mic. Yes. You've heard of Clash of Civilizations. What is? Yeah.
Yeah, that the difference between nation conflict and the value conflict within the nation. When he talk about the value conflict within the nation, he kind of doing the divide of the nation itself, like distinguishing the nation from inside. The problem is not between two or more nations. The problem is inside the nation itself. So that then that nation is not capable to control themselves or to draw on the future.
Yes, good. Okay. Now, yeah. So essentially, what he's saying is that it is not a clash between the West and the East, and actually, the West is objectively looking at the East. He's claiming so, and he's saying that the problem is you. It's internal. The problem is internally you. It is not outside factors. Yani he's saying that the colonization is not the problem. Sykes-Picot is not the problem. The neo-colonial aspects is not the problem. The Israeli presence in the region and its dominant hegemony is not the problem. It is you. It's an internal value problem in your characteristic and how you shape your values in the region. And therefore, this is the main problem of the region. Okay. ويتحدث رود لارسون عن تحول جذري في ألوان في ألوية هذه النزاعات في أولوية هذه النزاعات مشيرا مرارا بموضوعية العالم العارف. So therefore, what is he's talking about home? One moment. You see this, do you see the screen?
Yes.
The text. Okay, so okay. So now he's saying that the problem is not a clash of relationship between the East and the West. It is more to do with inside the region. ويتحدث رود لارسون عن تحول جذري في أولوية هذه النزاعات مشيرا مرارا وبموضوعية العالم العارف objectively إلى صعود النفوذ الفارسي واحتمال اصطدام القومية الفارسية بالقومية العربية. So therefore, he's saying that the problem in the region has to do with the Iranian or Persian resurgence and influence in the region, and therefore that Persian nationalism is a problem in the region. ومثبتا انتهاء الحقبة التي تبوأ فيها الصراع العربي الإسرائيلي وحده قائم ما يحول دون تحقيق سلام دائم. So therefore, he's not referring to the Arab-Israeli conflict, and that this is not the problem that is not bringing the region back to peace. It is the Persian problem. والحال أن رؤية رود لارسون طيب والحال أن رود لارسون أن رؤية رود لارسون إلى الصراع على أنه دائر بين القيم والطوائف والإنسانيات أو القوميات ليست رؤية عابرة للسياسي وصولي. So therefore, he focusing on the internal ethnic and group conflict in the region is not something bypassing. It's actually deliberate. بل رؤية راجحة رائجة في الدوائر الأكاديمية الغربية وتشكل إحدى ركائز نظرية الحروب الجديدة. So therefore, the first statement is that it is what is happening in this region is not the result of classic civilizations, but somebody is moving and there is disturbance on the microphone. So if somebody is moving, to just kind of stay put. Back to the text. So the first statement was that the conflict is not a clash of civilizations, but a clash of values in the same region, in the same society. The second statement is that this is because of that there is a rise of Persian nationalism in the region, which is causing the conflict in the values. Then, and what this is, so these are two statements. The context of the two statements is a third statement that this is part of not the Arab-Israeli conflict, but that is part of a new type of war, which needs to be contained in the region. Okay, and this new type of war التي ترى نزاعات ما بعد الحرب الباردة مختلفة جوهريا عما سبق. وبحسب ماريك كالدور أستاذ العلوم السياسية في مدرسة لندن الاقتصادية وأبرز المنادين بهذه النظرية راجع كتاب الحروب الجديدة والحروب القديمة. الأهداف هي الحروب تتعلق بالصراع حول الهوية الدينية والقومية والإثنية. So therefore, these new types of wars are focused around focusing not around rights-based or kind of self-determination, but are focused on religion, nationality, and ethnicity. And these types of wars needs particular type of armaments. It's not ideological أو المصالح أو لا أيديولوجيا أو المصالح الجيوسياسية كالتي دارت حولها الحروب القديمة. So therefore, this new type of war, the new wars, are not led by geostrategic interests and strategy as in the old wars, but is rather having to do with the conflict between religions, nationalities, and ethnicities. Okay. Now, in war, if you are war is a means to an end. So therefore, it is a means towards achieving particular objectives. Here, in the new war, there is no objective except to contain religion, nationality, and ethnicity, or to enhance religion, nationality, or ethnicity to maintain control over the region. So therefore, what he is saying is that the new types of war in these regions are one that are not knowledge-based, like the Western types of wars in which they are knowledge-based and based on how you use war to achieve political ends. It is rather an expressionist based, and therefore it's an expression of different identities, and therefore which is aimless. Okay, so by this new term, he's kind of promoting or interjecting into the region or the thinkers of the region through the institute which Turki al-Faisal represents and heads in Saudi Arabia, that your new problems are not the Israeli conflict, and it's not neocolonialism, and it's not Sykes-Picot, and it's not oil. It is religion. These three, which have nothing to do with resources, has nothing to do with land, has nothing to do with borders, has nothing to do with being independent from external factors. وأساليب القتال and the ways of fighting this new type of war بين أن قامت استراتيجية القتال التي اعتمدها القوى الغير النظامية سابقا وكان من أبرز مؤسساتها ماو وجيفارا on. So therefore, he's saying that the strategy of this new war is not like the liberation strategies of Mao Zedong or Che Guevara, or say any liberation movement or revolutionaries. على التضامن مع المدنيين واستمالتهم إنه to represent the cause of the people and their plight and political objectives, وتقوم على فساد حراك الثوري والميليشيات يعني which is based on revolutionary activity, but is rather زرع الاضطراب والرعب بين المواطنين بهدف السيطرة عليهم والتخلص ممن لا ينتمون إلى هوية المقاتلين. So this way of fighting is one that relies on instilling fear, is based on fear, and is based on trying to alienate those who are not like you, those who are different of religion or nationality and ethnicity. So therefore, there is no kind of strategic, geostrategic goals or political goals other than dealing with othering the others within us. So therefore, the Orientalist here is the discourse is promoting that you should. The main problem is that you should other yourselves, your own community, create new others within yourself, and the problem is that you are not unified, and therefore, because you are not unified, the only way is that your real problem is that you are. Is that you have a diversity, and this diversity is acting against your interest, because it means that you are not one religion, you are not one nationality, and you are not one ethnicity. But no place in the world is like that anyway. So why is then this region designated as having to have one religion, one nationality, and one ethnicity? Somebody's blowing into the mic, so either turn off the mic if you need to. Okay, the tamwil, and therefore, if the type of way one is fighting means that then there's a particular way of how you get the necessary tools to address this type of war. تشدد كالدور على لا مركزية شبكات التمويل للنزاعات الجديدة بما يتناسب مع علماء النظام المالي الدولي. So therefore, how you are able to deal with this is that you need to decentralize ability to fund. وعليه تعتمد القوى الثورية على نهب الموارد الطبيعية واحتجاز الرهائن مقابل المال. So therefore, because there is economic restrictions and embargo on the region or on such new war, those who are doing this type of war need to resort to taking over or places of natural resources or hijacking people or kidnapping people in order to get money to fund these wars. وبحيث يصعب التمييز بين العمل الحربي والعمل الإجرامي المافيوي. So therefore, in this new type of war, it's difficult to distinguish between war, the proper war, and then acting like gangs. الاطلاع على أبرز الدراسات. Okay, so therefore he talks about different studies that are being produced by مستشار البنك الدولي توني بلير والإفريقي وأستاذ الاقتصاد في جامعة أكسفورد. So therefore, several key knowledgeable people are talking about how this type of war means, or this type of new war is one that is more like gangsters than with political incentives. Agendas. What this means then also is that anybody struggling for rights in this region becomes a gangster and is criminal under this framework of that the problem is the values of religion, nationality, and ethnicity. And therefore, how would you then put the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is that it's either a problem of religions, a problem of nationality, two nationalities, the Zionist nationality, quote unquote, or as they claim to be a nationality, as opposed to the Palestinian people who have their own nationality, or it's an ethnic problem that we have the Jews represent an ethnic group who are dominant politically over another ethnic group that is Palestinian, but it has nothing to, the whole conflict would, according to this discourse or this discursive formation, have nothing to do with displacement of Palestinians and taking land and set to colonialism. So therefore, the repackaging of the problems of the region are done in order to internalize the problem rather than resolve problems dating back from the end of the World War I. And the League of Nations, which designated the mandate for the British to have mandate over Palestine. طيب والحق أن هذا التوصيف بغض النظر عن صحته ذو دلالة عميقة على فرضيات العنصرية والاستشراقية. So now, what is essentially Orientalists? They do not say that there is no religious difference. And even if you're not Orientalist, you cannot say that there is not a religious difference in the region. And you cannot say in the region that there are no maybe different nationalities. And you cannot claim that even if you're not Orientalist, that there are no ethnic groups. Yes, there are all these, but these are not the ones. These are not the factors that determine the conflict in this region. There are other factors that are conveniently being sidelined or put to the side so that the focus would be internal rather than dealing with the real problems, which is Western intervention through direct colonialism and neo-colonialism and settler colonialism, as in the Zionist case. And therefore, any disruption of the stability in this region is criminal and actually of the practice of gangs rather than the practice of sound political derived policies and strategies. والحق أن هذا التوصيف وهو ما تقوله كالدور فعلا ولما كانت النزاعات الدور داخل المجتمع الواحد وضمن الدولة الواحدة والفاشلة وفي ظل طلاق بل وتضارب بين المقاتلين والمدنيين فقد أصبح التدخل الخارجي أمرا منطقيا وضروريا لحماية الشعوب هذه الدول من أنفسها. So therefore, like the white man's burden of colonization actually comes for the benefit of all humanity. Therefore, because there is difference in this region and the people of the region are not sophisticated enough to deal with these differences except by force, therefore the only rational solution for this is that some outside factor come in to maintain keep the fact warring or the fighting factions or groups away from each other, so to keep the peace. So therefore, he's building in the discursive formation, or this discursive formation is building a dependency framework in which the region and the people of the region especially are dependent on the people of the West to better keep them away from fighting each other. Because they have different religions, different nationalities, and different ethnic groups. Yeah. Now, this statement that there are different religions, nationalities, and ethnic groups can be applied to different regions of the world. So why is this region kind of more on the focus than other regions? And even in the Western societies and civilizations and political systems and states, they have multiple religions, multiple nationalities, and perhaps multi-ethnic, if not multi-nationalities. Okay, so why is that not applied to them? In terms of why don't they say that they need the UN to come in, or some other party to come in to deal with racial violence in the United States, or racial discrimination in Britain or Holland or France or elsewhere? So why is this region more a candidate for such intervention than others? And notice that he's talking about the cause of the statement of the problem is the spread of Persian nationalism. He doesn't talk about states. Actually, he kind of says that the states in Terry Rod Larson's proposition, the role of the state, the sovereign state in the region, is not that important. And so therefore the foreign intervention doesn't come to kind of maintain the states or to kind of bring justice to people aspiring for states, such as the Palestinians, and who have the right to do so according to international conventions and international resolutions dating back from the Second World War through the 30s, 40s, 50s, and the UN resolutions to right to self-determination. طيب، وهكذا يصبح مشروع الحضاري أقل طموحا وأكثر واقعيا، فيقتصر على منع السكان الأصليين إبادة بعضهم البعض. And therefore, rather than resolving the whole Western domination dynamic of the region and the implication colonization, the easier conflict management approach is to prevent the people of the region from fighting each other. And people of the region, okay, من إبادة بعضهم البعض، وذلك عبر فرض قانون الاستقرار ومن ثم إعادة بناء الدولة. And therefore, to rebuild the state, I mean, it is not enough that we had the problems of the state structure after Sykes-Picot, which kind of reconfigured the alliance or allegiance of the individuals from citizens to being patriots. We talked about that in the first part of the session. The difference, الفرق بين الوطنية والمواطنة. إنه لسه ما طلعناش من أزمة الوطنية والمواطنة، بدهم يعيدون الصفر ما قبل الصفر، إنه لسه بدك تعيد بناء الدولة من أول وجديد. بعد إمتى؟ بعد قرن كامل، حوالي قرن كامل من تطبيق سايكس-بيكو. عمليا دور الاستشراقي هون انه يعيدك للقاره الاولى، اذا مش القاره ما قبل الاولى، حتى ينهيك كمان 100 سنه حتى تبني دوله جديده. So this is what he's promoting, and in the process he will be there to kind of prevent you from fighting each other so that you focus on building the new state. According to the demographic of this region, of the region. Now it is interesting that in the Berlin Conference at the end of the 1800s, which divided the whole continent of Africa into for the colonizers. You had, if you were to divide Africa into the number of ethnic groups, where you would have around 1,000 states. I can give you a map of that. Send you a map of how many. So therefore, and yet it was the states were designed, most of them with the configuration of today, based on the Berlin Conference of the previous century, before the previous century. Okay, so why here in this region, not only are the pre-designed states of Sykes-Picot kind of assumed to have failed by the Orientalists. They have failed because we are incapable of achieving, incapable of not fighting each other. Okay, so therefore the whole narrative then, the discursive formation is that not only is there focus on a particular aspect, which is true, but it is not exclusively the whole way to diagnose a whole region. Okay, there are other factors, and the Orientalist is selective in focus on what it focuses on, and what the implications are, and what the future plan should be, and what the role of the West should be in this new setting. ولكن بحسب طبيعة هذه المجتمعات أي ضمن إطار يتناسب والتركيبة الدينية والإثنية وأن تناقض ذلك مع المفهوم المعاصر للدولة الحديثة أي دولة المواطن. So therefore, you're not talking about states which represent all their citizens, but rather ethnic states. So therefore, you want more states like Israel, more states like Kurdistan, more states like which are trying to become monotype group of people. Okay, and everybody else who doesn't fit, you need to find a new state for them, which defeats the purpose of becoming more advanced and more sophisticated in how you deal with diversity in your region and in your community. The proposition here is that the assumption from the Orientalists is that you are incapable of accepting diversity. And therefore, because you're incapable, only the West has the sophistication to come in to maintain this separation of conflict. And under the assumption that even if you want to become more acceptable of diversity, more accepting of diversity, you do not have the mental capacity or the knowledge background to be able to do so. So this is a very condescending view of what is possible and what is not possible in the region. So somebody else, the Orientalists' tactic is to try to predetermine what you are capable of doing and what you are not capable of doing, and to try to encourage you that his or her way or his or her approach is the one that is more beneficial in the long run to the West and to the East. Okay, but without questioning the influences of the West and their agents in the region. وعادة مجتمع بما يتناسب هوياتهم وأهلهم تشكلان النواة الفكرية الأبرز لأبرز الآليات الجديدة المستخدمة في حل هذه النزاعات والممارسات الوصاية والمستمرة على الشعوب المتنازعة، ولكن بشكل غير مباشر أي عن بعد. So therefore, to affect the region not only by separating the groups, but by also separating, doing this from far. إلا في الحالات الفوضى حيث الإشراف المباشر ضروري. So where there is extensive violence such as Libya, Yemen, now and Syria, you would need multiple interventions from the West. كحماية منابع النفطية, to protect the resources of the region so that it doesn't affect the global economy and doesn't affect the standing of the West and stability of the West. So therefore, they need to save us from ourselves so that they can they can protect extracting resources from this region. So وتلك المنبثقة عن مفهومين رائجين في مجال الدراسات السياسية هما مفهوم مسؤولية الحماية, the responsibility of protecting, ونظرية الدستورية الجديدة. So the two concepts here, and this would be what was called the diffusive framework rather than the discursive framework, is one that you would need a narrative to try to system of arranging the whole discourse to two projects: forming new constitutions and therefore implicitly forming new states, and the responsibility of the West to protect the region, which is a new version of neo-colonialism. Okay. Let me see if there's anything else at the bottom. So here talks about Miguel Ignatieff, who talks about the responsibility to protect, and which has value implications أخلاقية. تبرر في حق التدخل عبر قرار يصدر عن مجلس الأمن أصبح مسؤولية. بالتالي you can intervene in the internal affairs of a region based on the right to being responsibility to protect the people of the region, supposedly, or protect the interests of the West in the region. So like the white man's burden, the Russell of Europe. Okay. I'll stop here with regard to this. Do you have any questions? Can we go? Okay. Anything? Okay, we shall go back to Vol. There are two people who are hooked onto the Zoom, whom I do not know. And there's one more. There's an iPhone, and then there's somebody else. So just if those who are online and they do not belong here, leave. Is somebody on iPhone? Okay, we're back to 18. I've removed anyone who is not listed. We had 2 non-listed people. Okay. So we go back to the to Hall. Just get the. Okay, we go back to here to the understanding Orientalism, representing the other. Okay, here. Okay, here, these are what you will be using to, in addition to what we've already covered, you will be using these points: Orientalism, the archive, the regime of truth, idealization, sexual fantasy, and misrecognizing difference, and rituals of degradation. And the summary. Okay, you will be using most of these. Some of them are not relevant to Huntington, but these are the main means in which representing the other or othering is done. And it falls into while he has Orientalism as one component, all the othering is part of the dynamics of Orientalism. Okay, this idea of concept of othering. So, so far, the discussion of discourse has been rather abstract and conceptual. So the concept may be easier to understand in relation to an example. One of the best examples of Foucault means by regime of truth is provided by Abu Said's study of Orientalism in this section. Now, what the Orientalists try to do, one of the characteristics of Orientalists is that they try to claim that they have ultimate truth, or that their version of the truth is the one that is supposed to be followed, and any other truth which is generated by someone more critical in the West or from this region, which may be counter, is not a truth. And therefore, there's the politics of knowledge, of whose truth is the one that becomes a reference point for knowledge production, academia, research, and also policy implementation. So Orientalism, in his book, Edward Said analyzes the various discourses of institutions which construct and produced as an object of the knowledge that entity called the Orient. So Said calls okay. So note that though we tend to include the Far East, including China, in our use of the word Orient, Said refers mainly to the Middle East, the territory occupied principally by Islamic people. So therefore, there's a kind of an interest in controlling the places where the regions where Muslims are, not because they are Muslims, but more because they are sitting on the most substantial resources of the world, which is the world is dependent, be it minerals, be it land, be it access, geostrategic considerations, or be it energy in the form of oil. So the main focus is French writing, and this is what you will see in the map that Huntington has in his chapter, or the one before, when he talks about the distribution of where regions, the distribution of people. where they are. In contrast with where the global resources are. Okay, so quoting from Said, my contention is that without examining Orientalism as a discourse, one cannot possibly understand the enormously systematic discipline by which European culture was able to manage or even produce the Orient politically. Here we're talking about شرقنة الشرق، إنه كيف تم صنع الشرق جديد وفق معايير ومنظور الغرب، ولا لها تداعيات sociologically, military, ideologically, scientifically, and imaginatively. So it is not only sociology, nor is it only military dynamic or representation, nor is it the ideology, nor is it only scientific. It also has to do with the imagination. So therefore, the Orientalist is already trying to determine what by imagining who the East is, they're also superimposing their imagination on the Orientalized. So therefore, in the dynamic of Orientalism, it also has to do with shaping your imagination as the one who is targeted, and therefore what your imagination should be, where the confines are. Do you want to be liberated, or do you want to have ethnic state? Yeah. Do you represent a problem or an anomaly in the international system, or is the whole international system and its discrepancy internalized in you, so that it is something you have to deal with within yourself? So it's like internalizing a problem which is not supposed to be internalized from the beginning. And so rather than the international system being the problem, or those who are the powerful in the system, you are the problem because you're not able to adapt. So therefore, you need to reshape who you are, the targeted Orientalized, and become Orientalized, so that you find your way within the discrepant international system that you have been produced from. So during the post-Enlightenment period, moreover, somebody is.
All of these honeys, my jump with no bungee. I'm going off that money. I'm trapped in my conscience. My job is to
who's on the mic?
This is a bug, teacher. It's a bug. Bug. It's a virus. Something like a virus. Bug. You can remove it.
Wait, I will. Yes. Okay. All right. So let's continue.
Black Beatles in the city, be back immediately, confiscate the money. That girl is the real proud piece. Small world, all the friends know me. Young fool living like a piece. Release the cash, watch it fall slowly. Right girl, still
becomes much more subliminal, subconscious intervention than what are obvious political, sociological, military, ideological, scientific. Okay, even though you need to be aware of not being subject to Orientalization. You need certain packages of knowledge to do this, but to be able to guard your imagination, that it's your own imagination, not somebody else's imagination. It takes more depth and maturity than what is normally invested. Okay, which is why you're taking this course to kind of see on how you find your ways to acquire your own knowledge, which you produce. Obviously based on also academic and objective criteria, but which is your own and it becomes your tool on how to explore and go deep into other systems of knowledge or other schools of knowledge. Okay, and therefore I believe that no one writing, thinking, or acting on the Orient could do so without taking into account the limitations on thought. Somebody is asking whether this kind of capability is dependent on states or individuals. It's first dependent on the individuals, because if the states have no reference to what the imagination should be, it is the individuals who shape who may be able to push the boundaries of what is collectively imagined beyond what is collectively imagined. Yeah, and therefore then backtrack into kind of bringing awareness either by example or by publication or other forms of kind of promoting. But the key is in you, in the human being as an agent, and why human agency is one of the components of structural power is that without the human and the knowledge that is being generated, you will not be able to organize the rest of the ability components of the structural power, let alone. And therefore, before you aspire to statehood, you need to know what the frontiers of the imagination of what the statehood should be capable of, and what it should represent should become before you build kind of the structure. Yeah. If you build the structure and then you think about what the imagination would be, then you're kind of constricting the possibilities by your own preconceived perception, which may not be well thought out from the beginning. Which is why, if you're going for independence, yes, you can get independence from colonialism, but have like the French have, and this neo-colonial continuation of colonization, which by one form or other you remain dependent on the colonizer. But if you're going for liberation, you have to have your own reference of what liberation is. And it has to be worked on in terms of knowledge acquisition, also your imagination, the subconscious level, as well as all the skills in dealing with the specific field you're in, whether it's sociology, economics, or politics, psychology, media, or other field, or even medicine and any other professional academic expertise. So in brief, Orientalism, because of Orientalism, the Orient was not and is not a free subject of thought or action. This is not to say that Orientalism unilaterally determines what can be said about the Orient, but that it is the whole network of interests inevitably brought to bear on, and therefore always involved in any occasion when that peculiar entity of the Orient is in question. So therefore, like Terje Larsen, what we just read, when he describes what the problem is, the religion diversity, the ethnic diversity, and national diversity, And what he couples that with is that there is a new type of war coming out, or what he couples that with is that there is the Persian emergence of the Persian nationalism. Okay, which means that the Persian nationalism, because it's more powerful, will eliminate the national, ethnic, and religious diversity of the region. So therefore, he's made the whole region very problematic. And by then kind of having a sort of categorizing this as in another category as a new type of war, albeit he's using some other intellectual. But the idea is that this is part of a new type of war. So actually what you're experiencing is something new. And therefore, because you're experiencing something new, you should experience building a new type of state. Because your 100 years of building your state failed and has led to more fighting. One could argue that, well, the 100 years of state making, modern state making in the 18th century only brought the First and Second World Wars, which were more catastrophic than this region. So if you leave this region alone, maybe we would, in 100 years, we could resolve our conflict without an interruption from the outside. Just like you Europeans were able to resolve your conflicts over time and bring about 2 world wars, and then we come to a new set of equilibrium, so to speak. So leave us alone, just like we were left alone, and then it will take time. Okay, this is if you're talking about if you want to counter that rebuttal. The Orientals will say this, but why waste time when when we can provide you a solution? The response is that the experience acquired by your own cannot be bought. You cannot hand over somebody else's experience. You can give from somebody else's experience can help instruct or develop the experience of somebody who wants to acquire experience. But you cannot just kind of reprogram your experience and input it by flash memory into somebody else's mind frame. Maybe that will be possible in 20 years or 30 years, where you can have a chip go into your brain, and then you can have multi-discipline, knowledge interfaces. Okay, but that is not even that is a technical kind of dependency. There's nothing more valuable than your own experience, which comes from practice, testing, and deducting lessons and ways to how to deal with the different aspects. The archive. Now, this is the second. The archive means is the institutional knowledge. Just 5 minutes until 3:30, and then we finish. But this one is he's more detailed in the archive because it has to do with classical knowledge. Is that the reference of knowledge is the Greeks, Aristotle, Plato, and the pre-Christian, the pre-Muslim reference to knowledge, which is kind of interesting. Why they have that as references and not say anything after. One aspect could be that the Middle Age Europe had nothing to produce in terms of philosophy and knowledge. So therefore, they go back to the pre-modern time, in the classical time. And therefore, anybody who wants to talk about knowledge and acquisition and production of knowledge needs to be of the origin of the classical philosophies. And then the 18th century was still debating whether. It's interesting that we go back to the 18th century in various texts. 18th, which is the 1700s, and then going into the 1800s. 17th century was still debating whether what they had discovered in the South Pacific was paradise. In 1768, the French Pacific explorer Tahiti, the new Citera, after the islands were according to classical myth, Venus first appeared from the sea at the opposite extreme. The descriptions of Herodotus. So therefore, their reference for what they saw in the new lands was based on the body of knowledge that came from classical time. Okay. So therefore, what the imagination of the West in discovering the other parts of the lands, whether they are the Americas or the East or the South, or where, kind of goes back to trying the imagination of what the classical body of knowledge of the Greeks promoted. Okay, that's one. Then there's the religious biblical sources, which these we talked about this in the Manifest Destiny, and then the canonization in Patrick Wolf. Religious and biblical sources. These were other source of knowledge. It determines how you deal with Jerusalem, the Holy Land, and how you deal with everybody else who's not from this religion or has different faiths. Okay, and then you have the mythology, which was also a part of the religious classical discourse, which goes back to which merges the Greek stories about the gods and what were the universe and who gods were with whom and who gods were jealous and all that, with also the religious biblical text. And then you have the travelers' tales, who kind of romanticize and superimpose what they imagine on what they are seeing in the places where they go, and therefore they become more expressive of what they would like to be seeing in these areas, rather than what actually is in these areas objectively. So therefore, we talked about last time of geographically through traveling elsewhere. There's this kind of dynamic of trying to find elsewhere the places and the geographies and the peoples to express the basic instincts, rather which cannot be expressed in their own context in Europe, given that they are supposed to be formal society or kind of adhere to a particular code of behavior. Okay, so the what is pent up and contained in the as part of the Industrial Revolution and the dynamics of containing your human feelings and also your human function become unleashed or kind of expressed more in the colonized areas, in which the total freedom of basic instinct expression becomes what captures the imagination, and hence the new places are places to control, to subdue, and to make repackaged according to the basic instinct of the colonizer. And also giving it some sort of credibility by going back to the body of knowledge that is accumulated over centuries since the 1300s, which we talked about last time. Okay, and just the last point of this, and then we will continue next time. So the travels generally are more sober and factual, but nevertheless achieve mythological status. So travels, what was expressed and written in the travels kind of gave this kind of imaginatory or imaginative taste or flavor to the places that they went to, and therefore that's why when I drew the negatives of the Orientalist, superimposing it on the Orientalized, on the East, it's actually their own version of the negatives which is superimposed on the other rather than objectively analyzing the other. Like Terje Rode Larsen, he does not objectively analyze the emergence or the dynamics that went into producing the current instability. Okay, what he does is say that this is how things are, and therefore, based on that, we draw conclusions that you are incapable of getting out of your problem. And therefore, the problem is internally within you. It is not something that is objectively out of you. Failure is not a person. Failure is an event. It's something that happens because there's some sort of misgiving or mispreparation or something didn't work. But it doesn't mean that it's a value judgment on the person who tried to succeed. And therefore, most of the inventors who invented new things, they went through multiple failures. Yes, it didn't mean that they, as persons, were failures. It meant that what the approach they took failed, but that they had the stamina yet to go on producing, to go on with it because they had an idea which they wanted to try to get across or try to achieve. Yeah. So what the Orientalist tries to do is that make personify the failure into a person so that it becomes more of a psychological problem than a problem of procedure and practice and objective analysis. If the Orientalist is able to internalize any given problem to the person, it means that the person is deficient psychologically. And therefore, needs a psychological therapy. And who is the one to provide psychological therapy? The Western, because they know more about us than we're supposed to know ourselves. Okay, this is the Orientalist discourse, and also it means that if you, as an targeted person, are able to differentiate between problems and person, then you are able to kind of get on an abstract level in which when you analyze your situation, from which you draw conclusions, you draw your deductions and your observations, and based on your conclusions and observations, you are able to design for yourself another path based on your object. Now, doesn't mean that you close off to any other suggestions. No, you listen to other suggestions as well, but see if they work or do not work. And most importantly, do the suggestions compromise what you're doing, or do they strengthen what you're doing? If they compromise and destroy what you're doing and say that you have to stop this and do something else, then you followed somebody else's line. And if before doing so, you need to make sure that you've exhausted all your analytical capabilities of understanding who you are and where you are and where you're positioned in your present time, based on how you see your past and how from the present time you see your future. The Orientalist is always trying to shape your future, and not only your future, your imagination of how you imagine your future, which is much more dangerous and deeper than just imagining creating your future and controlling your future. When they control how you imagine your future, they've controlled you completely, consciously and subconsciously, and therefore you need to be to get out of that. You need to be much deeper than the Orientalist in understanding who you are and understanding who they are. Okay, which is why then we come significantly to the regime of truth, which is what we will begin with next time. So next time we will continue with these components, regime of truth, and we will begin with Huntington's Clash of Civilization. I'm opening the mic if you have any questions, and also the chat if you have any questions.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Doctor. Everything from the material, it's wonderful. I can understand very well. But my question is not related for the course today or the material, but the finals diagram are our importance, but they did not put the names of the courses. They put only numbers. So my question: when is our final exam? They put three materials and finals. One in the 27th of this month, 28th of this month, and one of them and the 7 on June, or no, in 6. Yes, June.
Okay, the course for the exam for this course is the 27th. It will be from 2 o'clock until 4 o'clock.
Okay.
Okay, but maybe we might extend. So what I'll be doing is that you will do the second paper, which you submit on the 17th, which will be 10 days before the exam. Okay.
Okay.
I will try to give you feedback on the papers so that you are able to use the feedback for when you deal with exam questions. Okay?
Okay.
We will need to take from, we have, I think, from here until the 15th. Let me just check. We have one more session. We have one more session. So next week will be the next session before the end of term officially. But
yes.
we might need to take 17th as well, and maybe another day before either that Monday or Tuesday, which is more convenient for you, so that we have one longer session.
Excuse me, I think on 17th we have Frederick.
Yes.
At 1 o'clock, from 1 till 3.
We didn't set dates yet. We set hours, but we know the dates.
Okay, 17th we will still have from 1 o'clock till 3. Okay.
All right.
And we will need one more session, which might take on 3 hours. So if you want, we can do it a bit earlier in the morning, from 10 or something.
Okay,
but we can arrange that later, because we will need to go over the paradigms in international in global studies. Just a bit.
Okay, we will understand, but how the mechanism of dealing with the exam? So if we are in the university, we will do a handwrite just for the first paper and the second paper. Is this the same, but on the internet?
Well, the exams won't be on the university. You will not be coming to campus.
Yes, true. On the internet.
Okay.
So you will send us the material before the exam at exactly 2, and we will have 2 hours or 2.5.
Yes, I will send you the questions beginning the time of the exam.
Okay.
And then you will have to submit within the time of the exam. Or I'll give you the questions in the morning, but you will have to submit within the time of the exam. This is the regulation.
Okay, so it's about writing, about the email, not like electronic one by the e-class.
No. You need to write. You need to have all your material with you and all that you've written.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay, so all that you've done, the work that you've done for this course, you will need with you for the exam, but you will need to prepare in advance for the exam. So that you're not finding information while you're in exam.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll talk about that a bit later. But essentially, you will have the first and the questions of first and second paper, and another question about the paradigms in global studies. So you already basically know the questions.
Yes, thank you very much.
This is how you are able to produce and put into a confined space and time your written results. Okay. But I might need to modify it, because you will have the advantage of having your own references at home. So I'll need to modify something a little bit so that it works. Okay.
Don't worry. Thank you very much.
Okay. يلا hope you إن شاء الله استفدتوا وضليتوا صحيين مع إنه it is very dense, and when we go to Huntington, it will be bit less complicated. But that's why you need to develop stamina in this thing. Okay. Take care of yourselves and feel manillah. We'll be in touch. As I said, I will try to send you feedback and the grades of your papers during this week. And if you have any questions about the question for the second paper, let me know. If you need a Skype as well, just let me know as well. Okay?